Well, welcome everybody to I guess the first Tat Chat. Is this the first Tat Chat of the year, Dean?
Second.
Second, just kidding. Number two, it's just my first. Um, my name is Cam Spencer. I'm with Goodwin Mills Kaywood. We're an engineering and design firm with four offices across South Carolina, 25 total across the Southeast, and we specialize in water and wastewater design, among other things. And I am looking forward to Christy's update on the SC Water Plan. But real quick, just a quick 10 at the top update. Um, we have, some events coming up on February 24th. We'll be hosting our annual kickoff reception for funding partners, board members, and community partners. It will be from 5 to 6:30 in the 1881 event hall in Spartanburg. If you are a 10 at the top partner, you should have received that invitation electronically from Dean. If you're a current funding partner but are interested in joining us on the 24th, just send Dean a direct message. For those of us that are real quick new to the TAT chats like myself, we began this meeting in April of 2020 at the start of COVID, and it continues to provide a great platform for sharing information and resources here in the upstate and often across all of South Carolina. Please put your name and organization in the chat, and feel free to connect with others on the call. Though we are still early in the new year, it has been a busy start for 10 at the top as our role as a convener and connector across the upstate on issues that impact economic vitality and the quality of life. Dean is going to share a link to our upcoming events that we were just talking about. Hope you guys can join those as they come up. But as we continue, we will be hosting our first Upstate Connect of 2026 on March 4th at the Pickens County Museum with the topic of innovative land use policies in Anderson and Pickens counties. There is a link to register in the chat. Our first Upstate Downtown Academy of the year will be held on March 31st in the city of Inman. If you are interested in joining that one, you can also register with the link in the chat. 10 at the top is very fortunate to have a generous and loyal group of funding partners. In 2025, we added 13 new funding partners and have already added one new partner for this year. You can see the list of all our leadership level partners on the presentation slide, and the link is in the chat to the full list of all of our 100+ funding partners. If your organization or business is not a partner, don't worry, we always have room for one or two more. Now it's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Christy Ellenberg. She's the Director of Collaborative Partnerships and Strategic Initiatives for the South Carolina Office of Environmental Affairs to discuss the recently updated South Carolina State Water Plan. The 2026 census data just came out and just showed our state as the number one fastest growing state in all the country. So with this rapid growth, it's no doubt our water resources will face unprecedented demands and tests in the future. Christy, thanks for your time today. And hey, we look forward to learning more about this, and welcome. Once she's done, Dean's going to lead a Q&A at the end for all questions. So just hold those at the end.
Yeah, Cam, thank you so much for having me here today. This is my first TAT chat too. And first of all, what a great name. So it's nice to start off the day with 10 at the top. I will say I talked to Dean last week and I said, where am I supposed to drive? Where am I supposed to go? And he was like, this is all virtual. So I love seeing y'all remotely, even though I'm down here in Columbia with SCDES today. And I know 10 at the top has been a great partner to what was the environmental affairs side of DHEC, what is now the Department of Environmental Services. Y'all helped us so much in looking at air quality in the upstate. And I know there's so many things y'all are doing to look at the economy and community development up in the upstate as well. And so it's really a pleasure to be here with y'all to talk a little bit about really our water future and look a little bit at an overview of our state water plan. As y'all were noting, and look, we were trying different ways to do this technology ahead of time, and it kept making it really small when I was sharing the full screen. So we're going with, you're going to see a little preview of my slides on the side. But December 2025, we had a really remarkable day to celebrate that we updated our state water plan. I've got a copy of it here. It is a very large document. It's close to 200 pages. It is the first update of our state water plan in 20 years. And it took a long time and a lot of effort for that plan to come into play. And I'm going to say in 20 minutes today, I'm not going to read through all 180 some odd pages and appendices of that document. And there's a lot of supporting work that came in from our river basin councils. There's a river basin council, a river basin plan for each of the 8 river basins in South Carolina as well that coordinates with this. But there are some great resources out there for you to be able to dive deeper. So this was, like I said, just a landmark day for us in December of 2025. Governor McMaster had given us a challenge through an executive order in 2024 to say, I want to have the updated plan done by December 31st of last year. And so we were a few weeks ahead of schedule. He liked to say we were ahead of time and under budget in how we did it. So we were really appreciative of being able to celebrate the state water plan. But now is the really important part because we got to put this plan into action. And it takes everybody to do that. This is a picture of a lot of our Water SC members who were pivotal to making that plan come together as well. So let's talk a little bit this morning in the time we have about some of the information that's in the state water resources. If you were involved in one of our river basin councils, if you were involved in Water SC, or if you've connected with us in other ways through this process, we shared a lot of information and then we had discussions and then that led to recommendations. And so I'm going to try to give you a little, like I said, taste of some of that this morning in the time we have. And when you think of our state's water resources, I know for me, the first thing I will think of is our rivers. I grew up in the PD, so I think of my PD. I think of Jeffries Creek that is right there behind the house where I grew up in. But, you know, our state's water resources are so much more than that. So we think of what we're going to refer to as surface water first, our lakes, our rivers, our streams, those lakes and reservoirs that are part of our water storage for the state. And there's also the groundwater in our aquifers. Now, I'll say up in the upstate at 10 at the top, y'all are in a little different situation with your groundwater and how accessible it is compared to the coastal plain kind of below our fall line. So I don't know, Cam, what's the opposite of 10 at the top? Is that the 30 at the bottom, 36 at the bottom? But we'll figure that out of kind of where the groundwater is a little more relevant to meeting your water needs. But this is so important to us because as Cam just noted, we're growing so much as a state. And with that growth, we know how important water is and to be planning for how we're using our water. And I'm going to keep dropping in some little facts. You'll see kind of that little paper airplane on the side of a few slides that are pulling some facts out of the full plan that we have. But when we think about how important water is for us, as we're growing in population, we've got to be able to take care of our families. How do you have that water that we just know we go to our sink and it's going to turn on, whether it's from a private well, a public water system? You want your families to be able to have that reliable and safe drinking water that's available. And we're looking even at projections of population growth and what is that going to mean for our water suppliers. We look at what this means for farmers, what it means for agribusiness and agri-industry across the state, because that irrigation, the farmers are going to need irrigation at the driest times and the hottest times. They are very, very good stewards of water. Our friends at Clemson help keep looking at the next technology and ways that can be modernized with irrigation to make sure that the farmers are making the best decisions on how to use that water. And so they're great stewards of water, but they really need it when they really need it. And how are we going to make sure that we're looking at that? As we're growing in population, we're growing with economic development, we're growing with industry. That's really how you're having the needs for businesses and for our communities as well. There's so many conversations happening right down the road from me at the State House about our energy needs and state's energy future. And what does that mean from having the available water supply to generate that industry and to help with businesses that are expanding, whether that's a small business to a large industry. And then, of course, there's always, like I said, what I think of Jeffries Creek and, kind of just around my backyard growing up, it's how we're using our water resources for nature. And up in the upstate, y'all certainly appreciate um, where you can go and look at the waterfalls and walk and some hikes and go kayaking, go boating and things of that sort. So this it's having that healthy nature-based resource as well, not just for our needs, but for the needs of all the aquatic environment that's there and the fish and all that live in that environment. And so there's a lot of water that moves through South Carolina every day. And I know y'all have a lot of things that move through the inland port, but we've got 30 billion gallons of water draining into the ocean every day. And so there's a lot of volume there that's part of our very abundant water resources, but we still have to plan for how we're managing those resources and plan for tomorrow. So this was a very collaborative effort. I was very happy to be able to serve as the facilitator and helping the process design for Water SC. And that was a group that came together with Governor McMaster's executive order starting in the fall of 2024 to give kind of a statewide vision of what was happening and look at the work of the river basin councils and other information and kind of see if there were some statewide recommendations that could come from that group. We have our river basin councils. I know there's at least a couple of y'all. I was seeing some names that were popping up in the chat as we were getting started that had some connections to some of the river basin councils. Really, 3 of our river basin councils touch into that 10 at the top area. And so those were a great resource that really spent about a 2-year time frame each looking at different specific things to that river basin area. And then we tried to find ways to get the public and other broader stakeholders involved throughout as well. And that's something we're going to continue to do. So let's talk a little bit about if you were serving in one of those roles, or if you're going to look at the document, you see a little bit about what do we know. And that was one of the governor's charges to us is tell me, like, what do we already know about the water today so that we can make the best decisions for the future. So there are a lot of technical reference points that you can go to. I like to look at our current water use. So we have reported water use from large water withdrawers, whether that's surface water or groundwater across the state. And if you really look, the huge part of this is going to be that thermoelectric, so your energy usage. Y'all certainly see that in the upstate as well. But a lot of that energy usage is it's non-consumptive, so it's something that goes back into the resource, whereas our public water supply is a little more consumptive, right? We're consuming that water and not putting it directly back in. So if you take the thermoelectric side out to kind of have a better breakdown of how are we using water in our state with water withdrawals, your public water supply is that next biggest piece of the pie. And I will say, although manufacturing's over here at 24%, a lot of your public water suppliers, especially up in the upstate too, y'all are serving some of your industrial properties as well. And then we have agriculture at 15%. If you say, what is that other 2%? It's a lot of things. It can be part of mining, it can be part of aquaculture, it can be part of our golf course irrigation. So you have these kind of other smaller uses that are there. But let's put that into scale of how is water used in our state every day. If you look at daily water use, you could line up 1,000 of your peachoids, again, trying to give y'all a good 10 at the top reference. And that's about how much water is used statewide across our state every day. So we're talking really big scale of what we're doing. Again, back to what do you see if you look down into the state water plan and some of the river basin plans as well. This is actually done by river basin. So this is kind of breaking down water use with the thermoelectric. And you can see your upper Savannah has that high spike. Why would that be there? That's your thermoelectric, your energy production that's up there in the upstate, and then has all the other uses at the top. So upper Savannah, the Saluda, and the Broad all kind of hit into that 10 at the top area if you were looking by river basin as well. And if we take the thermoelectric away, you can see upper Savannah looks like the huge user here. But when you take that thermoelectric away, it's really one of the smallest users for all these other uses that are there. So we're trying to look at this analytically, work with our stakeholders analytically and say, what does this say? The other thing I can say from the surface water side is about 3/4 of our state's population, when we're going to turn on our tap, It's coming from surface water sources, not groundwater. About a fourth of the state is served by groundwater wells for our public drinking water. So we've got a lot of uses there, especially in the upstate. So we know how water is being used or reported, the larger use in our state. And then we had a lot of tools that our hydrogeologists and hydrologists, which I'm pointing upstairs, they're on the fourth floor just above me. They really do so much day to day and measuring and monitoring their surface water gauges across the state. Those are with USGS and other sources. We have groundwater monitoring wells. Those are with DNR and USGS and other sources as well. And they can look at those to try to see if there are trends or if there are changes that are happening with water quantity. And one of the things about the state water plan, it really was focused on water quantity at this point, but we're going to talk a little bit about how that connects with water quality in a moment. And so they can look at how water is being used, what's available in the aquifers. And then they did a lot using tools that were for modeling and forecasting. And I got to say, we love some acronyms. I always have to double check myself and what SWAM actually stands for because I always want to change one word in it, but it's the Simplified Water Allocation Model. And what that tries to do, this is actually a little example of that. It really looks at a point, it looks at a body of, looks at a river and tributaries off of it, and then puts different nodes and different uses in it, and it can project out what is that doing to that volume in that stream. And so we have SWAM models, we have groundwater models, and then we have those flow ecology metrics that are really looking at the health. How is that river or water body being able to maintain, like I said, all the fish and the full environment and habitat that are part of that system. So when we keep learning all that, we share it with these groups. We also bring in Dr. Hope Mazzell from DNR, who is our state climatologist, and her team. They talk a lot about climate, and we had a lot of discussion on drought and drought response. So there's a whole chapter devoted to drought and drought response. And this is from Lake Jocassee, the picture I have up here. But the thing that happens with droughts, we don't know when they're going to happen, but we know they're going to happen. And a drought's not just one dry day, it's a sustained time period. And then there can be different levels of drought. And so there are kind of drought response mechanisms, but there was a lot of discussion of how could we improve those. And I think there's some great recommendations that came out about this so that we can be better prepared for the next time the rain stops and we start having that drought condition as well. So this is from 2007, which was actually our third driest year on record. And if you consider how long we have, the very long time span that we have been recording our climatology notes and rain, I can tell you that's to be the third driest year is a pretty substantial year. But it was also part of a multi-year drought that we were having that we had to look at how to manage water in. So we've talked a lot about some of the information that was shared in the document. Let's talk a little bit about, there were also policy discussions. And I will say we started talking about those policy platforms as almost like a three-legged stool and then the cushion at the top. So there's three parts of that. There's a Surface Water Withdrawal Act that's part of that, that's looking at people with 3 million gallons or more withdrawn in any 1 month. There's a lot of grandfathered surface water withdrawals in there. That act came about in 2011. There's a Groundwater Use and Reporting Act that's kind of similar but a little bit different. Those are 5-year permits or registrations, and they are for the coastal plain of the state. And then we have the Drought Response Act, which again, DNR really takes the leadership in that. So if you think of those as kind of three key water management laws that we have, the other one is that Water Resources Planning and Coordination Act. And that's what says we need to have a state water plan and have that commitment to being coordinated in how we manage those resources. So we've looked at some of the science and information we've had. We've looked at some of the policies we've had. And that's when you started having discussions about how does this fit together. And so our permitted and registered amounts, if you look at how fully permitted those are, they were oftentimes based on intake. The groundwater is a little bit different in how those are calculated, but oftentimes what we're seeing is the permitted and registered amount of what somebody could withdraw is substantially larger than what their actual use is at this time. And so there was a lot of discussion of looking at the projections, what's going to happen with our growth, what's going to happen with modeling, and is it going to exceed that permitted and registered amount. But what we saw is, and as you can see here, 78% of the permitted and registered amount here is used. I think we see in the energy sector, it's a little closer to meeting what their permitted and registered amount is. But when you get into industry and public water supply, oftentimes we have kind of actual use here and the permitted use is much higher. And so on average across the state, only about 46% of the total permitted amount that can be withdrawn is actually being withdrawn each year. And what does that mean for policy? What does that mean for water management? Are there some better solutions? Again, trying to summarize 200 pages and multiple years in a few minutes. Make sure I'm not going too long, Dean. But we started trying to say, what does this mean for the future? So again, we looked at those projections for 2070. There was a moderate demand scenario and a high demand scenario. The high demand scenario was putting in like drier years and larger growth. And what that really showed us is that you can have some regional growth hotspots. You can have some impacts that are very localized that we need to make sure we're accounting for, especially on some of the smaller streams and tributaries. And then the thing that we know is when those models for projections were originally being done, we had a little bit different landscape of what's happening with our energy needs. And we didn't have data centers and technology into some of those scenarios. And so we're trying to look at how to make those models and projections even better going forward and use that to continuing to guide our conversation. So one of the questions the governor asked us is, do we have enough water? And the answer is, yeah, we really do. Right now, we're a very abundant water state. We're very blessed in that way. So we have the water that we need to support our people and our economy right now and for decades to come. It's plentiful, but it's not limitless. And there can be some things that we really need to start taking into account now and planning for. And that's what led to a lot of our recommendations. So we want to manage things wisely today so that we can protect our prosperity and our resource for tomorrow. So if we go into kind of some of the recommendations, Water SC and a statewide level in coming together last year, one of the things they said is this can't stop. We can't wait another 20 years to have the next update of a water plan. So we want this to be a living document. And they talked about how can we continue this, being able to even leverage public and private funding to be able to implement the plan, to be able to improve data collection, to be able to update our models and make sure that we're continuing to move forward with taking care of our water resources. Another high topic of conversation is how do we coordinate with our neighboring states? So when the city of Charlotte is looking at their public water supply and looking to change their interbasin transfer, which that was a conversation that was starting to happen in the last few years and will be in the years to come. What does that mean downstream for South Carolina? Y'all are right there at the corner with borders of North Carolina and Georgia. There was a lot of conversation of Georgia when they're putting some large industry in the Savannah River. What does that do to impact us? And say, how can we have more coordination, more shared data and modeling and planning between the states? That could be a very formal mechanism, and there are some of those formal mechanisms out there currently, but it also can be just how do we keep planning and communicating together. We talked about the importance of water education and outreach. I think one of the things I saw in the room with Water SC, we had a meeting where we asked every sector that was part of that group to get up and kind of write down what they're doing from a best management practice. How are they taking care of our water resources? And I saw some people say, I had no idea that that was being done from one side to another. So when you had agriculture, energy, our public water supply, we had our conservation partners all at the table. They're bringing those best practices to share with each other. And there's so much opportunity, not just to tell people there is a water plan or what's in it, like I'm doing today, but how do we keep learning from that? Because from a household level to a small business level to an industrial level to our agribusiness level, everybody can keep learning ways to be better stewards of our water. We talked about strengthening the drought response system. Again, very closely working with DNR and Hope Mazzell, Dr. Mazzell, our state climatologist, to look at what are we doing with our drought committee membership? How are we helping with localized plans for drought? How are we helping with state coordination and looking at the triggers and indicators for drought? And then there was a lot of discussion about beneficial water reuse. So I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with a purple pipe, but if you have something that is coming out, it's been treated to a point that it is viable water, or sometimes maybe even a cleaner water. How can you use that in our state? And we talked about some of the things that are being done in other states that maybe aren't done here, but there were some great examples from the Beaufort Jasper region of kind of water reuse, and how can we make that available for others. And then I told you a little bit earlier, how do we connect water quality and water quantity? We see that as really the next big step now that we have the state water plan, and think that it's going to lead to a lot of exciting opportunities of how to make sure that we're taking care of our water resources for the state. And then there's also, I told you, that policy side when we look at permitted available amounts versus actual withdrawals. How do we review our water permitting? DES, we are there to ensure that waters are used responsibly and that the health of the water is maintained. So we're kind of reviewing our authority, working with others to try to determine, are there some policy needs or changes that could also help in that realm. So if you look at river basin councils, there were some recommendations that were very specific to a certain area. I know there were some that were very focused on local ordinances and more buffers and tree canopy. Those are very valuable recommendations. There were some that seemed to be a little more common themes across the different 8 river basin council plans that came together. And a lot of those kind of echoed what we saw from Water SC as well, that it's strengthening that planning process. Let's make sure we keep river basin level discussions going. And so RBCs will continue. And then how are we going to get water quality into this conversation? How are we improving our data collection to have more informed decisions? How are we improving drought readiness? How are we looking at our laws and policies and that core strategy of education? So with those recommendations, it helps us as the state agency that's charged under that Water Planning Act to really set our priorities. And some key takeaways I want you to remember is that this water plan is a living plan. It's a document. I've got it. I can hold it up on my desk, but it's also something that we want to keep seeing how we're making progress, because if you have a plan, the key is how are you implementing it? And I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to keep moving forward. So we're going to look at that policy framework. We're going to look at kind of comparatively the groundwater versus surface water policy and see if there's some suggestions that could be made there, or their policy needs for beneficial water reuse with response to droughts. We are already establishing stronger relationships, especially with Georgia, than we previously had, working across state lines for sharing information and trying to plan together. And then we're also looking at, what can be that broad communication and outreach strategy if we see some great ideas that are coming up from some of the river basins in the upstate. Can we share those tools and resources with others and make sure that we're looking at how to have the best information available? How do we keep investing in our data and modeling? How do we connect water quality and water quantity? And how do we really leverage public and private funding for the implementation steps? Because I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities. So if you look at kind of where the water plan is, the day we presented it, we were standing there with state leadership. But the true implementation of the water plan, what makes me excited about it is that everybody has a leadership role in our state's water future. So I want to encourage y'all to stay engaged or get engaged, connect with your river basin councils and see what they are doing. There may be some different opportunities to engage at that local and regional level. Stay informed, look for those education and outreach opportunities and things to learn. And, make sure that you're helping us, look at our resource fully and collectively for your town, your business, but also across the state. And I will say, I've been holding up my paper copies of our water plan. We have the water plan. We also have kind of a leadership guide. And I want to encourage y'all to look at those. Those are available digitally on our webpage at des.sc.gov. And there will be some continuing things. There's a lot that's already on on the calendar, and I think the calendar keeps filling up. Dean, I'm so happy you put this on the calendar when you did. But Sustain SC is going to be hosting an event. The three river basin councils in the upstate are going to be hosting an event. Those are both in March. We are bringing together kind of a Water SC kickoff that'll also invite the RBC co-chairs to Columbia in just a few weeks. And we're going to be hosting our first statewide water summit in May. That's not even on the webpage yet, so that's early information, but that is Tuesday, May 19th, where we're trying to keep the energy together to make sure people are learning, people are having those thoughtful discussions, and we can put those recommendations into action. So with that, I'll make sure we try to look at some of these questions, Dean.
Yes, we have a few. I'm going to start with the easy one and get into the harder ones, which I'm sure you know kind of what that topic's going to be about. But the first question was about declaring a drought. You declare them after the event has happened, going back historically, or is it, when they meet a certain threshold during a drought? How does it work to know that we're officially in a drought condition?
Well, and that's where they have kind of a drought response committee that meets, and they look at, I will say, some quantitative as well as some qualitative measures. And there was some discussion too, again, with Dr. Mazel, and I don't want to try to lead this astray, so I'm not the technical expert as she is, but they're looking at a lot of different factors that are part of that and having those calls to say what's happening in the area. And then there can be different kinds of droughts that are kind of declared. You can have is it meteorological? Is it, there's kind of the agricultural drought? And that's with some of the discussions I heard at Water SC, it's when it's affecting the farmers might be before an official drought has been declared, because their time frame, again, when they need the water, they need it in the hot, dry summer, or else it's going to impact the crop. And so, is it something that's being measured from the center of the river, or is it something that's being measured on the ground in the field at that time? And so, I think there were a lot of discussions of kind of what those triggers are and how they might be looked at. And then she was saying there's some national measures and things that they look into as well. So I would be remiss if I didn't say the more technical answer to that would be from Dr. Mazel in the climatology office at DNR. But there are some great resources here in the full document too. So I have the joy of being that facilitator at the front of the room. So I get to listen to all these great, smart, intelligent experts talk about things. So I am not the expert on that, but I do know that that was a big part of our discussions.
Great. I want to get to the
Is
next
that the easy
couple
one,
that I
Dean?
think
I
that
might be
was the easy
stumped.
one that I think are somewhat connected. Heather Nix asks about was the volume of water consumed by thermoelectric water use estimated during the planning process. And I don't know exactly what thermoelectric water use is, but I'm guessing, Heather, it is similar to the AI and data centers, which we have two or three questions following
Yeah.
yours about. So
So
can you talk about all of that sector and kind of how that was included in the plan and knowing that there's a lot more coming?
yeah, so I'm going to see what I can do in this one too, Dean. So I think thermoelectric, if we look at our reported water use, is this large part right here. So uh, I'm going to say I'm a Clemson girl, so I've seen, those what happens right there when the water goes in from Lake Kiowee and comes out in Lake Hartwell. That is my non-consumptive use example of what are we doing with thermoelectric use. So that use is measured, and it's part of a permit with us. And it was part of the discussion of kind of when you have those power plants that are using water, but also returning it. Again, the high percentage of this thermoelectric use is related to that non-consumptive power generation use. And so we've had some power plants that went offline, and some things that have changed in energy over time, but we're also seeing where that's kind of turning the corner, and we're seeing where we're looking at how do we take care of our state's energy needs moving forward. So if you're looking at this number, this isn't like specifically, I'm going to say data centers, like you were saying, Dean. This is really looking at that mostly high percentage of non-consumptive water use that is part of our energy providers today. And then if you look at what's happening moving forward, again, there's a lot of conversation about this, whether it's in communities or whether it's at the State House, of what's projected to change. So we've seen our energy providers that have said we're going to have more energy to meet the growing energy needs for our state. And we have a team that would be working with them and the multitude of required permits that would be part of any type of expansion of energy projects in our state at different scales. And so water use would have to be part of that. And then that would, if there's going to be a new or modification of a permit that would be needed there, then you would, again, that would be the water being used by, think of Santee Cooper and Duke and Dominion Energy, that type of thing. So there's kind of that level at the data center level. What we're seeing is a lot of discussions of what does the water need, how is that technology evolving, and what is the water resource, and are you putting that in the right place? I think, when I hear economic development or even from a real estate side, you want to have the right thing in the right place, right? So, are you going to have responsible water use? How is that being managed? And we would look at that as any other project coming in. Again,
so Christy,
lots of conversations.
To that point, is there like a, through DES or someone kind of as, whether it's the data center or the AI stuff, all these things that utilize a very significant amount of water, is there, when in the permitting, to allow them to come and, to different parts of South Carolina, is DES involved in that, so that, there's some clarity that there is enough water supply in the area that they're looking, and it's not going to negatively impact the residents and the other businesses and, things in the areas that they are, talking about locating?
Yeah. So the way I would say, Dean, is whether we're looking at a data center or a large industry that wants to have their own withdrawer side, or an industry that's coming in that's going to be working with local public water supply, there's a number of different permitting programs that are out there from the Bureau of Water that would connect into any of those decisions. And then, when you go through that permitting process, that should help, look at the why and the how, and is it meeting those needs of a permitting decision, if that makes sense. So we do see a lot of conversations. When I talk about our collaborative partners, I get to connect with some of the economic development discussions at times, and there are times that a company has come to Department of Commerce and said, we're looking at 5 sites, but we know this is our water use needs. We're going to need groundwater. We're going to need it at about this amount. And of those 5 sites, are there some that are better suited than others? They don't always say that. Sometimes they have a choice and they say, this is what we're doing. We receive a permit application for that spot. But there are times that we've helped say, looking at these 5 areas, you may have some that are better going to meet that water use availability and some that aren't. Okay. So, we do have conversations when we're having those permitting discussions as well. And that permitting framework is there. Again, there's a lot of discussion at the RBCs and little at Water SC as well of, are there some ways to improve that policy? Is it a regulatory solution or a non-regulatory solution?
And George mentions that, that some of the data centers are going to more of the closed loop water usage. So there's a big need, and then it's lessened and then becomes more sporadic. So I don't want to go into those details in the last couple minutes here, but it sounds like technology and things are working to try to alleviate some of the huge amount of need that these data centers and things have. So I think over time, I'm sure it's a matter of understanding what the need is and how it connects to what the use and availability is in the different parts, the different basins in the different parts of the state.
Right.
So last question, we'll touch on the water quality. Um, uh, Avery Young mentions that there's inconsistency between municipalities' costs and especially in small developments and in engineering fees, and it becomes very hard for civil engineers to prioritize water quality, to do the right thing. How is in the plan? How are things being done to make it easier for smaller municipalities, for different places to not have to choose between, cost issues and, losing some of the ability of the water quality?
So I think there are a couple of levels that I'm hearing there of, and I'm seeing that the issue is municipalities have different rules. Um,
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is we do have, we work very closely with the Rural Infrastructure Authority, with our public water providers. We also know there are a lot of parts of the state where you're going to have, your private well is going to be your resource for water for your home. And how is that being managed from a water quality standpoint? I think it can change a little bit, like you were saying, Avery, across different systems. I'm hoping as we have these kind of planning documents and have these continued conversations, you get some resources that can help from the local level up. And like I said, there were some suggestions I know relative to water quality, from, I got to go see if it was the Saluda or the Broad or maybe both RBCs, because I'm doing this kind of a little bit from memory. It's a lot of pages, Dean, but I know there were some that were talking about, how do you encourage more riparian buffers, which can help with water quality, which can help, at the municipal level, that could be an ordinance level decision, not necessarily a state level policy. And so, are there some best practices that we can keep sharing as we have these planning documents and this living document as well? Avery, I hope that helps what you were asking. I might need to follow up with you a little bit, or get you in
Sure. I
touch
was
with
going
her.
to ask
Am
Christy.
I able to just kind of
Sure,
restate
Avery.
the question? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I think it's maybe not coming through text. So it's partially that each municipality, and this is mostly on stormwater quality. Um, every municipality has different requirements for like what targets they want us to meet, but not only do they have different requirements for those targets, they have different models. So
Mhm.
that includes computer models. Some of them are on paper, some of them are different equations that they want us to use. And it makes it incredibly difficult. It's the only part of our job where we have a different model or a different software for every single municipality.
Okay.
And the result of that is, I mean, for some of these developers, it can be tens of thousands of dollars in
Right.
additional engineering fees where we have to learn a whole new software to go work in
Mhm.
a different county. Right, and it delays projects, it creates this barrier to entry, and I think the result of that a lot of times is people start running into, well, why are we seeing so many of these tract homes, why are we seeing so many, larger developments and all these bigger builders, and we're not seeing small developers anymore, we're not seeing community developers, and they can't afford that cost to entry for
Mhm.
the increased fees, right? That burden is only able to be borne by some of these larger developers. So I guess a lot of us in the industry are curious with the new water plan and y'all discussing more water quality issues. Are there plans to make that easier on the design side and more streamlined between municipalities?
And Avery, that's a great point. I will say in this collaborative partnership role, the water plan is one of the collaborative efforts we're doing. We have had some kind of permanent central workshops working with, some of the engineering firms and consulting firms to try to make sure and some of those were very stormwater focused. We've had some conversations with MS4s trying to look at, kind of consistency across those or best practices across those and how we coordinate with those. And there's also been some discussions with some home builders across the state too, to say kind of what are you seeing and experiencing. And so I know, I don't know that the water plan speaks to that today, but I do know we've been having some different conversations, and I may really want to get some people from our Bureau of Water to follow up with you after this conversation too, because I think they can make a much more, they can give you a lot better information in that, and it would be great to kind of hear your perspectives. So Dean, make sure I get connected up with Avery.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to ask Christy if you could put your contact
Yeah.
information in the chat. And also, you mentioned the Water Summit, which isn't on your website yet, but coming up in May.
It's
And then
coming soon. Yeah.
also the Basin meeting, if that's an open, opportunity for people to attend, if you could put the information about that. I know there are folks who would want to participate. I know there's been talk about Water Basin, because we have 3 of them here in the upstate, of doing something collectively for a long time. So I think that's an important step as part of all this. So Christy, you did a great job of consolidating hundreds of pages into 30 plus minutes. Thank you so much for giving us kind of that first blush. And we certainly will, we will be sending out Christy's presentation, and then also a link. The water plan is on the state website, right? So
Oh, yes.
we'll make sure everybody has that. And we appreciate you being part of this, Christy, and for all that you guys do in
Yeah.
the Department
And
of
I will say
Environmental
too, in
Services.
addition to the water plan, there's that kind of, I call this the Schoolhouse Rock version. This is kind of that leadership guide. That's a good summary document too, that can help with a lot of conversations with people that you might be having with local leadership as well.
Perfect.
Thanks a ton.
Thank you.
I will stop sharing.
Okay. Next, I have been hearing from Justine and others quite a bit about Hone. I don't know a lot about it personally, so I'm looking forward to hearing John Coe talk about the partnership and what's going on with Hone. So, John, I'm turned over to you if you want to share a little bit about what you guys have going on.
Yeah. Can you hear me here?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, Hone is a new nonprofit restaurant incubator in the heart of West Greenville. It's a partnership with Mill Village Ministries. It's an idea Dan Wiedebenner, who's the executive director at Mill Village, and I came up with. We just wanted to create a space for people in the food industry, chefs who are wanting to start a restaurant, but might not have the means and might not have the experience. And so we have a space, 2,400 square foot restaurant with a full bar and off of Lois Avenue. And so we have 5 concepts working out of here right now. We have a breakfast concept called Daylight Burrito, and then we have a coffee concept. And then we have for lunch, we have Tasty Plate, which is Caribbean cuisine with Aquila. And then at dinner, we have some rotating chefs with a couple other chefs, Muni Muni with Mike Lizard and Lola Selly. And tonight we have Lucy Ann's, which is a Italian concept. So it's just a place for them, not just to do pop-ups, but to be in here on a regular basis, multiple days, multiple months, get in the reps. They have to hire their own staff. They have to order their own food. They have to deal with their taxes and whatnot. And so we kind of just put up some guardrails for them, give them some advice. Some other restaurateurs in town have volunteered their time to help mentor a lot of these restaurateurs. So yeah, we've just been open since December 15th and kind of approaching our 2-month mark. And yeah, it's been going really well. The community has been very, very supportive. People are excited about coming in and trying new cuisines. Every day there's something different here. And so if you want to get our schedule, we're on Instagram with Hone, HONEGVL. And we have a website, honegvl.com also. But yeah, it's just restaurants are getting, as everybody knows, the margins are razor thin. It's very, very difficult to even get into the market. Once they're in the market with rising labor costs, food costs, whatnot, This way it gives them an opportunity instead of spending hundreds and thousands of dollars to open their first bricks and mortar. This gives them an idea of like, hey, does my concept work? Am I a good operator? Do people like what I'm doing? Am I able to market my product well in the community? So it's been fun to see, and everybody's learning a lot. There's a lot of growing pains, but yeah, I think people that come in here and taste the food are like, this is a really good concept. So
Well, it sounds really cool, John. So basically, if I want to go um, there, uh, one night it'll be Italian, another night it'll be a different kind of food, and but every night or certain nights of the week, I can guarantee that there's something cooked by local chefs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you check our schedule, like tonight we have Lucy Ann's very talented chef Mike Redneck who does Italian food. He used to be executive chef in Daco in town. And, he does a lot of great pastas, homemade pastas. And then tomorrow night we have another chef, Carlos Baez, who has a new concept. He used to be the chef at Mr. Crisp. He's doing more of a Puerto Rican influence food. And then Saturday night, there's a ticketed dinner with Chef Michael Izzard and Carlos Baez. And there'll be like, I think they sold about 670 tickets. So yeah, there's gonna be ticketed dinners. There could be walk-in service. So just check all our Instagram or website to find out the schedule. But you'll be here supporting future entrepreneurs in our community.
Perfect. Well, I am affording, I have put the link to y'all's website in the chat. It sounds really like a great concept and very similar to some of the incubators, as you mentioned, business incubators, especially over the years, the great one they have in Gaffney and certainly Greenville and Spartanburg and other places have had some really good incubators that have brought businesses to success. The last thing I want to ask you, John, is the goal then for some of these concepts and uh, um, chefs to then take after they've been in y'all's incubator for a while to then start their own restaurant or things. Is that the ultimate goal?
Yes. So we hope that all these entrepreneurs, each concept stays in here from 6 to 9 months. But from month one, we're working on a plan for them to, I introduce them to commercial brokers, business brokers. We're looking at locations. So yeah, so that's the main objective, to see then if their concept work and is well received by the community, and then start looking at some real estate, some bricks and mortar. One of the things is sometimes it's difficult for these entrepreneurs to break in with a real store, like a landlord, because the landlord will like, I want to see your balance sheet, I want to see your other units involved, and some of these guys don't have no experience, and so I tell the landlords, hey, you can come in, you can try the concept, have a meal, see how their service is, and also look at their financials from the past few months and show, hey, this is a very viable concept that'll be great for this shopping center in Easley or Powdersville or wherever it is, but just gives them a little bit of extra opportunity to get in the door with some of these landlords.
Well, great. Well, I am excited because I have found a new place to go check out some good food here in Greenville. Always good and helping entrepreneurs. It's a great concept, and we wish you much success. And like we said to everybody, the link is in the chat, and hopefully you'll check out Home Greenville and have a great meal from a budding chef.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be
Perfect.
here.
Yes. So, Cam, I'm going to turn it back over to you to close this out. I've put the link to our March TAT chat in the chat as well, but I'll leave it to you to close this out.
Yeah, thanks, Dean, and thanks for everybody that jumped on today. John, sounds like an awesome concept over there. I love all things in DACA, so that's all you had to say for me. I'll be there. But anyway, yeah, next Tat Chat will be March 12th. Yeah, Christy, thank you again for your time. Yeah, on March 12th, we'll be hearing from Mary Hip. She's with Feed and Seed to talk about some of the food insecurity and food systems stuff in the upstate. And again, yeah, just mark your calendars for February 24th for our annual kickoff reception that's coming up soon. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Hope you all have a great week.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.